Hello, friend. Okay. Hello, friends. So, welcome to the very first episode of the podcast. As I said before in my last live, we are just going to get this podcast off the ground. It's going to be live, it's going to be messy, and we're going to figure it out. So, today I wanted to go back to one of my most popular videos, and it's on the thumbnail. You can see it. It's called Wannabe Flower Farmer. Here's the best and easiest way to get started. And now that I'm on year 5 in my business, do I still agree with what I originally talked about? So let's get into it. First impressions when I went through the video again were, wow, I missed those red glasses and man, I missed that garden. But other than that, it was just kind of interesting to see how far I had come. And wow, I also wore a lot more makeup. All right. But silly things aside, let's do a little quick recap of sort of how I started out back then, if you're new to this channel, and then where I'm at now. So, when I started my flower farming journey, I was actually in the city of Saskatoon. I lived in a neighborhood called Newtana, and it's sort of in the middle of the city. That was really advantageous because then it sort of didn't matter where someone in the city was. I was in a fairly central location that it was easy and reasonable to come and buy flowers from me. So I had a smaller garden. It was probably about 12 or 16 feet by 20 to 24 feet. I think I said exactly what it was in the video. So whatever is in the video, that's what's accurate because I was actually there at the time. And then I had a few raised beds that I also worked off of. Now, at that time, I was able to get about 3 to 10 bouquets a week from that size of a garden space. And I also mentioned in the video that if I was like not a content creator and if I was only trying to be a flower farmer, I probably could have got up to 15 just because I felt like I'd been able to cut every single stem. But, being a content creator, I always kind of held back a few things because I felt like I needed pictures both for like the future and just like for regular social media things. So now we have moved and we have been at this acreage. This is our third year that we're actually living at the acreage. We knew before we actually moved here that it was like in the works for us to take over this acreage, but it just also um, required our in-laws to like get jobs out here and just some like finagling. So we weren't exactly sure when it would happen, but we knew it would happen. So we were able to garden here a year or two earlier than when we actually moved here, which was very helpful for like getting the soil together. Um, so right now my gardening space is about 40 feet by 90 feet is the main area that we have 4 raised beds and what I like to call the glamour garden. And each of those are 4 feet by 8 feet. And then we also built a few more raised beds. Those are at the back of the house. Those are sort of just for me. And in my mind, those are raised beds that I don't have to make beautiful. They don't have to be photographed. I can just sort of do whatever I need to do with them and they're just for us. So we have 3 of them. We originally built 4, but then decided we needed the wood for something else, so, we took one down and stole the wood. But such is life. Okay, so that's sort of oh, right, maybe I should say too how much, like, I sold then versus how much I sell now. So when I first started just from the backyard, I mainly did pop-up sales. This was also around COVID times where you could just sort of go online, say like, "I have these bouquets for sale," and you would usually sell them. Now, by the time I started, like, it wasn't quite as easy to sell, but I would say it's easier than it is currently. I also did some events, and when I was in that backyard, I did my first set of weddings. So the very first 6 weddings I ever did were from that backyard garden. I definitely had to supplement, like, the backyard garden could not do everything, but I also had smaller orders then too, so, like, it kind of all worked out. Right now at the acreage, my current business, we just started doing a farm stand last year. It's definitely not off the ground, and I still don't have enough flowers for it, but, like, this year, I really hope to, like, really get that going. We do a few markets. It's about 10 a year or so. It just depends. We do a lot of weddings. Last year I did around 20. And am I forgetting anything? No, I think that's oh right, bouquet subscriptions, yes. And we do bouquet subscriptions as well. And I usually get anywhere from about 15 to 20 bouquet subscriptions. So that's where I am currently, and that's how we're going into it. So basically, my whole thing of the video was like, if you start in a backyard, there's a lot less risk and you can make a lot more mistakes. That was the basic gist. Now let's go through like all of the points that I talked through. So less cost because of the smaller scale. Do I still agree with this? Absolutely. Um, I have really struggled in the last 2 years since I've, like, really expanded my business with trying to manage, like, how much I need to spend on investing things versus, like, how much profit that still leaves me with, and I think that's a pretty common struggle with anyone who's trying to ramp up their business. And when I was still on, like, the backyard, my seed costs were maybe, like, 3 to $400. We didn't have any irrigation. We didn't even have sprinklers, like, I just hand watered everything. We had a rain barrel, so we got, like, half the water we needed from that rain barrel. Excuse me with my weird voice here, just one moment. There we go. And, like, the water didn't really make that much of a difference on our water bill versus now, we're like, we still don't have an we still don't have an irrigation system, but we do have, we water everything. We have sprinklers. I try to save as much water as possible, but I'm still using the sprinklers, and I am on city water even though I'm on an acreage. So our water bill definitely goes up, like, probably about $200 a month just for the flower farm, and, like, that depends too what the weather is like. Um, Last year was not that bad, but we had a leak, so that made our water bill a little more expensive. Um, yeah, and even just, like, the amendments, I found that in a backyard, it was so much easier to find, like, the amount of compost I needed or get grass clippings from someone or leaves or it just wasn't that much. It was pretty easy to figure out everything, and where now I find, like, if I need grass clippings or leaves or whatever, it's like I don't need just 2 or 3 bags. I need, like, a dump truck full, 4 dump trucks full. And so managing that and figuring out where to source that, making sure, like, for a while we did not own a decent truck. So, like, then that became really difficult to find somebody who was willing to come out to the acreage and deliver things. And that's another thing is when you scale up and if you're on a rural property, suddenly getting people to come to you if you don't have a truck or some sort of trailer or something to deliver becomes so much more complicated. So as I said before, when I was in the middle of the city, that really wasn't an issue because everybody delivered to me and it was no problem at all. And because I needed a small scale, even if I only had the car and we didn't have a truck, chances are I could at least fit in half of the bags of compost or whatever I needed to work with my garden. So yes, I still stand by what I say. Okay. The next point I have that I made in the video was you're able to skip irrigation, they're more savings. So absolutely just told you about my watering bill. But even if we didn't have a watering bill, even if we built a well, that has associated costs. On this property, there is an old well. It's not currently operational, but to fix that well and get it operational, I'm sure it's like a minimum of $1,000. And I'm sure it's much more than $1,000, but I just feel like to get someone to come here, look at it, assess what the damage is, for sure 1,000. And when you're able to do rainwater, like it's just so much simpler. Setting up an irrigation system, if we chose to do that because of the scale that we have, that's probably, again, another $1,000 investment. Where even if I did irrigation in a backyard, that would probably be more like a $200 investment. Okay, next point was less space equals less risk and it's easier to manage. And that is so true. So let's talk about the risk part of it. When I lose a crop and it's just in a backyard, like, yes, it sucks. Don't get me wrong. But because my orders are smaller and everything, like, we're not spending as much money to like buy another seed packet, try to regrow, or buy from another flower farmer to try and do the thing. Like when I lose, oh, so let me rephrase that. So this spring, I just could not for the life of me get stuff to start from seed direct sown. It was just a bad spring for it. I probably bought an additional $200 to $300 worth of seeds just to try to like regrow what I had already lost. And again, because of the scale I'm at, it's just that much more expensive. And I feel like I haven't got my financials completely done yet for the whole year. But what I have done so far and what I've looked like because I had to like regrow so many seeds, because I lost so many seedlings, because I had to buy from so many other flower farmers, I feel like at the end of the year, we might have profited, but it's not going to be very much. Like we're going to be just past the break even point where if I hadn't lost all those things, I feel like we would have had a decent profit. And again, when it's on a smaller scale, just doesn't hurt so much. Okay, next spot. Less pressure because I'm not selling to florists. So I still don't sell to florists, but what I know from the people who do sell florists is that they're expecting you, once you start selling them, to be able to offer something weekly and to offer what you do offer fairly consistently. Now, I don't know. For me, that's a lot of pressure. And if you're just in a backyard, you probably can't do that. So then you just don't have that stress and you don't have that pressure. Okay, next point that I made was you'll be ready for the big place because you've made all the mistakes on the small one. Okay, that one I don't know if I agree with. Like I sort of agree with it and I know what I was getting at. I'm going to like amend that and say you're going to get rid of maybe your growing mistakes on the first one. So like if you're brand new to gardening, just doing it in your backyard is great because that is the time to mess up on the seed starting, to mess up on the growing, to mess up on all those things. So I just said to rebuy the seed, to try and redo things. If you, God forbid, have to go to a greenhouse and just like buy starts from them, it's not so terrible. But when you get to this acreage size, it is so terrible. And going to a greenhouse and buying what you weren't able to grow is probably like not an option at all because it's just so expensive. Now, when that does happen to me, um, I will still buy like a few things from Patty. So sorry, Patty is the owner of Mother Earth, and it's the greenhouse that I can literally walk to. I live so close to it. Um, so like I bought some eucalyptus plants from her, and when she has Lisianthus, like sometimes I'll buy, 4 to 6, just so I have it for pictures. But if I was having it for flower farming, like that would be ridiculous and not making any sense. Um, then the other, maybe the last point that I made about starting from a backyard is just reiterating the point that this type of money from a backyard is not going to pay your mortgage, or like it's very unlikely. Maybe you have a giant backyard, and so maybe you could pay your mortgage. I don't know. But just by my calculations, being able to produce enough for like, say, 10 to 15 bouquets a week in peak season, that's probably like by today's prices, you're going to have to sell that for like 35 to 40. I feel like that's sort of your minimum price to make money. And for context, I'm in Canada. So if you're American, depending if you're more rural or if you're more urban, that price is going to be a little different. But I just found this year for my market bouquets, kind of 35 was my base price. Um, yes, that's still say like ideally $350 a week for 1 month. Oh my goodness, putting myself, is that 1400? I think. We'll check the math later, but let's just go with 1400. So that would be 1400 a month. But then where I live in a short growing season, you've only got 2 months of that. So like max, if you're just selling the 10 bouquets a week, you're probably making, let's be generous and say 3,000 because you might have sold something on the shoulder seasons or whatever. At a backyard scale, you're probably looking at $3,000 unless you buy from other flower farmers and leverage that with their flowers as well. So again, it's not like it can't be done, but realistically, if you're growing from backyard, this is to save up for things like kids swimming lessons or a family vacation or something like that. We're probably not doing a full-time job. Okay, so in conclusion, I pretty much agreed with everything I said from that first video, except for the one point about the making mistakes, because there are so many more mistakes you can make when you scale up, and the consequences of those mistakes just feel so much larger. Okay. One more point I wanted to make though is that one thing I like about starting with the backyard is it goes with sort of my philosophy that like there is never going to be a right time to start anything. Like you're never going to have all the resources. In the case with like having babies and stuff, like if you have little ones, it's going to take a while before they're in grade one. And sure, you can wait till they're in grade one, but do you want to wait 6 years? Or do you want to like have a messy flower farm? And then by the time that 6 years comes, you actually have like a bit of a business going and something so that you can really start flying with it. It's just never the perfect time. So that's why I'm just really a fan of like doing it now, doing it imperfectly, and just see what happens. One other challenge that I wanted to mention, I'm just reading off my notes here, is that when you scale up, and this is something I didn't mention in the original video at all, you might need to look into hiring people, and that comes with like its own ball of wax. Now, I've been very lucky. The people that I've hired have been excellent, but like if you don't know people, it can be hard to find somebody that you trust, someone that's reliable, no matter who you hire, unless they're coming from like another flower farm or something or have tons of gardening experience, you're going to have to teach them how to weed. You're going to have to teach them how to seed start. You're going to have to teach them everything. And realistically, I feel like anyone I've hired the first season that I've hired them, it's taken them about 3 months to like really feel good about the job and know what they're doing. And then when they come back for that second year, that's where I'm really like having the dividends of this, so to speak, where they pretty much know what they have to do. They just need their checklist and away they go. So yeah, that's another thing to consider as you're scaling up. Okay, last thing is that when I was looking at this video, of course, at the end, I talked about the ebooks and resources that I have for doing your own flower farming journey. And it just was funny to me how like it was all the first versions of those. So just for fun, I want to show you the new versions. So cut flowers made simple. If you're brand new, this is like the best place to start. And this is made for backyards. And then bouquets made beautiful. And this is like to help you make more beautiful bouquets and just explaining in a really accessible way how to do that with lots of projects, lots of recipes. When we first started this, it did not have the recipes. Then this one I thought was hilarious. The Frostproof Flower Garden, the version I had up there, I think was like 20 pages. It was so short. And now this is like completely flushed out and we'll give you like a flower by flower thing and what temperature you can take them to. If you're not familiar with this, I killed so many plants to write this book, like 6 years, all the killing of the plants. I killed some plants last year because I still want to do an update about like actually how far you can push the ones that will like be the most cold tolerant. And then the seed saving book, that was the first book I ever wrote. This one also got a really nice update. I added quite a few more seeds to this, just like told some more stories, made this more accessible. This is a very visual book. So if you are a visual person, this is the thing. I don't even think that I had the Flower Farmer Garden Planner. I just had like the original one. Either is good. This is probably a better one for the backyard, but if you're doing a business, this is definitely the one. And especially if you're like acreage scale, farm scale, has a lot of room. And then the other thing I didn't have back then either was the business basics course. So this used to be a course. You can still get it as a course if you want. It's all self-paced because I don't have the time to like give people the energy they deserve if they invest in a course. So it is all in a book. I'm actually really proud of this. I feel like it turned out so well. And again, this is just for beginners and it's just going to give you a crash course into marketing and all those things that you need to do. But yeah. So thank you so much for joining me on this very first podcast episode. As for like when they're going to happen, it's going to basically be when I have a babysitter. That's sort of what it boils down to. I'm thinking it'll likely be sometime around 10 a.m. on Fridays. But again, I'm not going to guarantee that's going to happen because sometimes my babysitter may get sick. Who knows? But eventually we'll sort this out. We'll get a regular schedule going. As for right now, I'm not on all the podcasting streams. Again, we are just doing this quick and dirty, and we're going to figure it out as we go. So eventually they'll be up there. Oh, that was my alarm to go pick up my daughter from preschool. So I guess that's a great time to quit. We will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you have a great day and an even better gardening season. Bye-bye, friends.